They laughed when he stepped into the arena. A human, soft, small, forgettable. She said, "Survive the 4 proving worlds and I'll consider your offer." It was a dare, a mockery, but he took it, not for love, but for something bigger. He faced jungles that ate memories, oceans that broke minds, deserts that hunted him, and fire that wanted him erased. This isn't just survival. This is defiance. This is the story of how one human challenged the stars and made them listen. You are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move toward this wonderful story. Rivendell stood on the edge of the training yard, heart thudding in his chest as alien cadets filed past him. They didn't look at him. Not really. Some sneered, others whispered, but most simply acted like he wasn't there. On the star-forged military station known as Sector Virelis, everyone knew his name, and not in a good way. He was the only human cadet ever accepted into the elite Galactic Union Combat Academy. To most, that was a mistake. He was smaller than the others, softer by their standards. Where the Scar moved with explosive speed and the Revikins bore armor, as skin, Riven just had grit. He didn't come from a warrior race, he didn't have venom in his blood or muscle-coated bones. What he had was stubbornness and a reason. Each day began before sunrise. While the others slept, Riven trained. He ran drills through gravity shifts, lifted weights twice his size, and learned the tactics of 20 different species. He didn't complain, didn't try to win their respect. He just kept going. They called him soft shell and meat bread, and sometimes worse. But he never fought back with words. He fought back by showing up, again and again, Marin Vex noticed. She was everything Riven was not. Tall, sharp-edged, and terrifyingly calm. Her race, the Valkyrie, was known for producing warriors who didn't flinch when stabbed. She ranked top in every simulation. Even her voice had an edge, like cold steel. Most cadets avoided her. Riven didn't. He watched her during strategy briefings, during combat tests, not with longing but with focus. She was the peak of what they all aimed to be. He never expected her to look back. But during one of the regular sparring drills, her silver eyes met his across the training room. It was like being hit by lightning without the burn. She didn't smile. She didn't frown. She just saw him. The challenge came weeks later. A public combat trial was held in the central arena. Every cadet was required to enter. No weapons, no armor, just body and will. The arena, built to simulate the gravity of various battlefields, was a swirling cylinder of sand and stone. Spectators filled the metal balconies above, most there for entertainment. When Riven's name was called, laughter erupted. When Marin stepped in as his opponent, the laughter got louder. Everyone expected him to be broken in seconds, and he almost was. The bell rang. Marin moved first, a blur of movement that slammed into Riven's chest like a wall. He fell hard, gasping for breath. But he stood. Again and again, she knocked him down. And every time, he got up. Blood trickled down his cheek. One eye swelled. He limped. Still, he rose. Marin tilted her head. "Why do you keep standing, human?" He wiped blood from his lip and said simply, "Because I don't know how to stay down." The crowd quieted. Not completely, but enough to notice something had changed. Marin took a step back, circling him. "Your kind is weak. You'll never survive the proving worlds." He didn't hesitate. "Then let me try." She laughed. Not kind, not cruel. Amused, intrigued. "Survive the proving worlds and I'll consider your offer of union." The crowd roared. It was a joke, of course. Everyone knew it. No one survived all 4 proving worlds. They were nightmare training zones meant for the deadliest species in the galaxy. Even the strongest failed at the 2nd or 3rd, but Riven nodded once, calm and certain. "I accept." "You don't know what you're agreeing to," she said. "I do," he replied. That night, He sat alone in the observation deck watching the stars blink across the darkness. His ribs ached, his hands were scraped raw, but he was smiling, not because of her promise, not really, because he had a chance. Back on Earth, no one took humans seriously. The Galactic Council had labeled them emotional, impulsive, physically inferior. This was his shot, not to marry Marin, but to prove them all wrong. To show that humans had something no one could measure. He didn't care if they thought the vow was real. What mattered was the challenge. Somewhere behind him, unseen in the shadows, a Jari officer watched him through a silent lens. She tapped a small communicator on her wrist. "The human accepted," she whispered. "Begin preparations. Trial World 1 would begin at sunrise. They didn't expect him to survive, and that's why he would." The jungle world of Torshal was alive in ways that defied reason. Its trees breathed. Its shadows moved. Its ground pulsed like it had a heartbeat, and into this wild nightmare dropped one small metal pod with a single occupant, Riven Doss. The pod cracked open with a hiss, and a wave of hot, damp air hit him like a punch. It was thick, humid, and clung to his skin like wet cloth. He stepped out slowly, boots sinking into moss that looked like meat and smelled like old blood. All around him, the trees loomed high and unnatural, purple leaves, black vines, bark that shimmered with faint blue lights. There were no stars in the sky, only a green haze that made it impossible to tell the time. He had no weapons, no supplies, just a basic survival pack, a heat knife, and the will to keep walking. The proving world of Torshal was known for one thing. It hated hesitation. Stay in one place too long, and the jungle found you. It sniffed out the weak, the dying, the careless. Riven knew this. He moved. Slowly, carefully, eyes scanning the trees, ears tuned to every strange cry that echoed through the canopy. Somewhere far off, something howled, not in pain, but in hunger. On the second day, he made his first kill. It wasn't clean. A six-legged creature that looked like a snake with spider legs dropped from a vine and landed on his back. It hissed, limbs wrapping around his chest. He couldn't scream, could barely breathe. He reached for a sharp piece of broken root he'd found earlier and stabbed again and again until the thing stopped moving. He didn't cry out. He didn't shake. He skinned it, cut the meat into thin strips, and cooked it over a fire made from bark that sparked when struck. That night, he didn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because of the jungle's voices. They weren't real. He knew that. Torshal had tricks. Echo bugs that mimicked sounds. Voices. People you loved. People you lost. But when he heard his brother's voice, "Riven, please. Don't leave me here." He almost answered. Almost. He didn't. By the fourth day, the jungle shifted. The moss underfoot became jagged, dry. The trees bled when cut. Sweet-smelling sap poured from their wounds and attracted massive insects, some the size of dogs. He kept moving. His arms were scratched. His shirt was half shredded. His legs ached with each step. But he kept going. On the sixth day, he woke up to find one of those insects crawling up his arm. Its body shimmered with blue veins. It bit down, and fire ran up his skin. He screamed once, then bit down on his own hand to stay quiet. He heated a rock in the fire and pressed it to the wound. The skin sizzled. The pain nearly made him pass out. But the infection wouldn't spread. He made sure of it. Sometimes he spoke aloud to the jungle. "Is this all you've got?" he muttered one night, leaning against a giant root. The jungle didn't answer, but it listened. On the eighth day, he found a clearing with bones. Old cadets, Valkyrie armor, melted and twisted. Nearby was a fragment of tech, an old water filter, cracked and dusty. He cleaned it, replaced the seals, and finally drank clean water. His hand shook, but he smiled. Rain came on the ninth day. It wasn't water. It was thick, black, oily. It coated his skin and made him slip on the rocks. He built a shelter from giant leaves that smelled like rust and slept curled beneath it. Even then, he didn't rest easy. The jungle screamed all night, then came the screamers. Creatures that used your memories. They waited until you were tired, broken, ready to give up. Then they whispered in voices you knew. This time it was his mother's voice. "Why are you doing this to yourself?" it said from behind the trees. He didn't speak. That was the trap. Speak, and they pounce. Believe, and you die. The creature crept closer. He could hear it breathing. He waited. Still. Silent. Then, when it stepped near enough, he turned and drove his knife, bone sharpened, bloody, into its neck. It shrieked, face melting, eyes appearing across its body as it died. He burned the corpse and moved camp again. On the 12th day, the jungle gave one final test. Everything turned quiet. Too quiet. He reached a canyon where twisted vines formed, a rope bridge. The other side had the marker, the beacon that meant survival. He stepped on the first vine. It held. Then the second. It snapped. He jumped. The bridge gave way, and for a moment, he was falling. But he caught a vine with one bleeding hand, swung across the gap and landed hard. The impact knocked the air from his lungs, but he rolled, crawled, and reached the beacon. It lit up. Yellow. Then green. Far above, in an orbiting command ship, Marin Vex stood in silence. "He did it," an officer whispered. Marin didn't reply. She only watched. Her face was calm, but her hand trembled slightly. No one had expected the human to last more than a day. Riven had survived 12, and he wasn't done yet. The drop was silent. No roar, no fire, just a slow descent into nothingness. Riven Doss floated in a small pod, knees pressed to his chest, eyes half closed. Outside the glass there was no sky, just a gray sea stretching out in every direction, smooth and endless. This was Zephyros, the second proving world. No jungle, no creatures, no clear threat. Just the ocean. The ocean of thought, they called it, or the sea that remembers. It didn't kill with teeth. It killed with memories. The pod opened with a hiss and Riven stepped out onto a thin metal raft no larger than a door. It rocked slightly under his weight. Around him nothing moved, no wind, no waves. The water gleamed like melted glass. He was alone. No land in sight. Just endless, perfect stillness. He sat and waited. The first few hours passed slowly. He kept himself occupied. He recited names of Earth's cities, capital planets, the names of every cadet he'd ever trained with. But time here didn't move normally. The sun above didn't rise or fall. It just hovered, soft and pale. On the second day, the voices began. At first it was faint, a whisper in the back of his mind like static. He ignored it, but it grew. The sea didn't speak with sound. It spoke with memory. His father's voice came first, sharp and disappointed. "You should have stayed where you belonged." He closed his eyes, bit his tongue. The voice faded only to be replaced by others, old instructors, childhood friends, bullies. "You're not meant for this. You're just pretending. You'll drown like the rest." By the third day, Riven had stopped sleeping. Every time he closed his eyes, the sea dragged him into dreams, twisted and cruel. He saw himself on Earth running through ruined streets, trying to save his younger brother. In the dream, the boy always fell, always cried out, always blamed him. "You let me die." Riven would wake in a sweat, breathing hard, fists clenched. But there was no escape. The sea didn't let you leave. It didn't hurt you with blades. It peeled back your soul. Still, he endured. He reminded himself of why he came. Not for love, not for glory, for something more. To be seen. To prove that humans were more than their pain, but the sea was patient. On the fourth day, it changed tactics. The voices grew sweeter, encouraging, comforting. You've already done enough. Rest, Riven. No one would blame you for stopping. Even Marin's voice echoed softly, filled with sympathy. You were never meant to finish this. He almost believed them. He lay on the raft, body shaking, lips dry and cracked. His mind felt like broken glass. Every memory bled into the next. Nothing felt real anymore. He wanted to close his eyes. Just for a second, then a new voice spoke. Not from the sea, not from memory. His own. No one's coming to save you. The words struck like lightning, not spoken aloud, felt deep inside. The sea couldn't copy that voice. Not with that tone. That fire. You want to prove something? It said. Then move. He sat up, grabbed the rope from the emergency pack, and tied it around his waist. Then, without thinking too hard, he dove in. The cold hit like a wall. It wasn't just temperature, it was emotion, grief, guilt. Every regret he'd ever had pressed against his chest. But he swam, deeper and deeper. The sea darkened, then glowed. Beneath the surface were ruins, massive towers of glass and metal, pulsing faintly. A forgotten city. He pushed on, lungs aching. The water thickened, not with pressure, but with memories. His mind flashed with old moments, his first fight, his brother's last words, Marin's stare in the arena. But he kept swimming. Near the base of one of the towers floated a small cube. Black, simple, rumored to hold the memory of a race that had vanished from the galaxy. He reached for it. The sea fought back. Suddenly, he was no longer swimming. He was back on Earth, standing in the rain. His brother lay dying at his feet. Fires burned around them. You left me, the memory said. Riven shook his head. This isn't real. You could have saved me. He closed his eyes, clenched, his fists. I was a kid. I didn't know how. The memory screamed. The world shattered. He was back underwater, fingers wrapped around the cube. He kicked upward, lungs ready to burst. He broke the surface with a gasp, coughing, shaking. The sky had changed. It was no longer gray. It was soft blue. Calm. The sea had gone quiet. Above him, Marin watched the live feed, arms crossed, her face unreadable, but her lips parted slightly. He brought back the core, someone said beside her. She didn't respond, but her hand, resting on the console, closed into a fist. Riven lay on the raft, soaked, gasping, but alive. He had taken the worst the ocean had to offer and come out with more than survival. He came out with truth. The desert world of Koresh burned without fire. Its sunless sky glowed a dull orange, and the ground shimmered with heat that never seemed to stop. Riven Doss stepped from the landing ramp of the trial pod, his boots sinking into dry red sand. There were no trees here, no water, no shelter. Just endless dunes, cracked stone towers, and bones. So many bones. This was the third proving world. Koresh wasn't designed to test strength or sanity. It tested endurance. You walked or you died. Simple as that. He had 30 kilometers to travel on foot across one of the harshest terrains in the known galaxy. His supplies were limited. 2 water capsules, a solar cloak to protect his skin, and a signal chip that would activate the final beacon once he reached the end. That was it. No map, no path, just heat and time. The first day was manageable. He kept his pace steady, followed the angle of the twin moons above, and only stopped to drink once. By nightfall, the temperature dropped fast. He wrapped himself in the cloak and tucked into the side of a dune to sleep. The stars above flickered like they were watching. On the second day, his foot found broken stone. It was one of the old watchposts, ruins of a long-lost species. Massive rusted beams stretched toward the sky, half buried in the sand. He didn't stop to explore. He didn't have time. But something about the silence there made his skin crawl. By the third day, the wind picked up, and so did the trouble. Riven spotted a shimmer near the horizon, too straight, too smooth. Something was out there, not the environment. Something watching. That night, he didn't sleep. He dug a shallow hole in the sand and lay motionless, listening. At just past midnight, something moved. Soft steps, too careful to be an animal. Then a quiet click, like a weapon locking into place. Riven rolled left just before the shot hit, turning the sand beside him into glass. This wasn't part of the trial. He crawled away under cover of darkness, using the dunes as protection. Several someones were hunting him. Not trial monsters, trained killers. On the fourth day, he confirmed it. Footprints in the sand, not his. Long strides, military pattern. He was being tracked. Someone wanted him gone. Not tested, erased. Still, he moved forward. He avoided open paths, climbed through dry riverbeds, and used his cloak as a decoy once to distract a sniper. Every time he rested, it was with one eye open, one hand on a rock or a bone knife he'd fashioned from a skull he'd found in the dunes. On the fifth night, one of them finally got too close. The attacker wore advanced camouflage armor, barely visible against the sand. Riven faked a fall, stumbled, collapsed, and played weak. When the figure approached, he struck. He smashed. A rock into the helmet grabbed the weapon and dragged the attacker into a shallow ditch. It was a Jarnian cadet. Young, trained, and absolutely prepared to kill. Riven found a transmitter in the soldier's pack. It held a message, short but clear. Target DOS. Eliminate before trial completion. Collateral damage permitted. Directive. Confirmed by High Council. He sat there in the sand for a long time, message replaying in his head. It had never been about the trials. They didn't want him to prove anything. They wanted him erased. Quietly. Cleanly. So he kept going. Not just to finish the trial, but to defy them. By the time he reached the final checkpoint on the sixth day, he was limping. His water was gone. A cut on his shoulder had dried into a dark smear across his cloak. But he walked into the beacon range without falling. Without crawling. The signal activated. A voice confirmed his location. Extraction approved. Far above, aboard the council ship in orbit, Marin Vex stood in the war room, surrounded by silence. Her access had been limited since Riven completed the second trial. The council had been embarrassed, ashamed that a human, of all species, had come so far. They hadn't listened when she defended him. Now she realized they never planned to. Your candidate, an officer muttered, was marked for removal. Marin didn't answer. She stared at the data feed. He was still alive. She turned and walked away without asking permission. When Riven stepped back onto the transport ship, there was no cheer, no escort, no congratulations. Just a single Medi, drone waiting with water, bandages, and silence. He sat down, staring out the window at the desert fading beneath him. He didn't smile. He didn't speak. At the academy, the shuttle landed quietly in the lower hangar. Marin was waiting. She didn't speak at first, just looked at him. This bloodied, limping figure who had defied every expectation. I survived, he said, voice rough. She nodded once. You weren't meant to. I know. Around them, silence stretched like a rope pulled tight. Then Marin spoke again. This was never supposed to be real. Riven gave a tired smile. And yet, here I am. That was when the whispers began. Officers, nobles, even cadets began to appear. No one spoke out loud. But they were watching. They had seen enough. The challenge that had once been a joke had become something else. A promise. A reckoning. A signal that the galaxy was changing, and that one human had started it, not with power, but with persistence.